Welcome back to Season 2 of the Waddyado podcast. I'm your host, Claudia Gasson, organisational psychologist, talent partner and career strategist. This season, we're talking about real-life career challenges that shape our professional lives across a range of careers, whether you're facing tough decisions at work, navigating career transitions, or looking to level up in your role. We've got the stories, insights and expert advice to guide you. So if you've ever asked yourself, what do I do next in my career? You're in the right place. So let's dive in. In this episode, I sit down with Lara Sheldrake, who has had a unique and, in her own words, squiggly career journey, navigating multiple industries before launching her own consultancy and founding Found and Flourish. I love this episode for a few reasons, but mainly due to Lara's honest tales and vulnerability on how she balances purpose with profit in impact-driven businesses, managing motherhood and entrepreneurship, but also how she has faced challenges like burnout and perfectionism. Lara offers insights on setting boundaries, prioritising self-care, and finding a supportive community to help maintain a healthy work-life balance. Let's get into it. Well, Lara, welcome to the What Do You Do podcast. It's an absolute delight to have you. I'm really excited for this chat today.
Hello. Oh, thank you so much for having me, Claudia. It's so great to be here.
Brilliant. Well, you have a very, very interesting background. And before I go and mess it all up, I would love for you to talk us through, what do you do for a living?
Yes, of course. So I'm a mother of 2 children. I run multiple businesses. I'm a community strategist and an embracer of everyday activism. I'm on a mission to connect people to their purpose and really demystify the overcomplicated world of business and community building. So I teach others how to build community, both as part of company culture as well as communities around purpose-led founders and startups, so that they can have more impact in the world and a greater sense of freedom. I do this through my consultancy, where I work with founders one-to-one, but also across group settings. So I've got my courses, my programs. I run them also for universities. I do business mentoring for the Roundhouse self-made program, which I absolutely love. Taking a few steps back, I used to run a consultancy until I got pregnant with my first child, Bodhi, and was thrown into so many unknowns, where I realised just how lonely running a business was, especially whilst also trying to raise a tiny human alongside building a business. And there was just so much I didn't know, and so many nights that I would find myself feeling really lonely, trying to navigate so many ups and downs whilst also juggling, parental and caring responsibilities. So I went on a hunt for a community that I could be a part of, but nothing really resonated with me at the time. And that's when I had the idea for Found and Flourish. So we're a network for women and non-binary people in business who are braving the world of entrepreneurship, craving connection, support, resources. So I basically created the community that I craved at the time, and have been running that for the last 6 to 7 years. We run events online, offline, around the country, and that's where we met. I think you came to one of our first events in Brighton, and then we found out we had worked in the same company many years ago, not together unfortunately. And then the second community I run is called Give a Shit, which is a really kind of new, it's more of a passion project at this point, but of course it shouldn't be a passion project. It's going to be a profitable business. And I'll tell you why the profit element's really important. I basically have spent the last 8 to 9 months in an empathic distress hole, looking at what's been going on in the world and watching from afar, feeling completely helpless. And so this kind of mission was born from a need to do more, but support purpose-led founders and impact-driven businesses who, are trying to make the world a better place and working towards a better world, whilst also prioritizing profit, which is something that so many people end up neglecting when they are primarily building for purpose. And so I really want to again demystify the world of purpose and profit, because they can work in tandem. And I think, from speaking to a lot of the purpose-driven businesses I've spoken to, they tend to be pigeonholed into this non-for-profit kind of sector. And that's really not how we're going to drive real societal environmental change. We need these impact-driven businesses to be making money as well, because more money in the hands of good people means more good people making, big decisions, getting seats at the table where they wouldn't otherwise have. And money makes the world go round, unfortunately. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with Give a Shit. And we've just started running events. We're going to have a podcast soon. So yeah, lots of exciting things coming up. But we've only been, I think we've been like up and running for about a month. So long way to go.
Love it. It's pretty inspiring, all of the things you do. And I think it's really good to pinpoint how, and just talk about how we actually first met, because I'll tell you a little bit of a story. So I had a friend who was a member of Found and Flourish and said, Claudia, you really need to check them out. And I was in a point of my business where I had a digitally remote team and I was feeling very lonely as a solo business owner. And she was just like, Found and Flourish has all the wonderful community and resources that you need in order to feel supported as a solo director of a business. So I joined, lovely. And I came to a Hugs and Brunch, and then it went from there. So
the rest is history.
Exactly. And here we are today. So brilliant. So nice. Let's get into the journey of you, because I think you have a very interesting background where you've come from. Well, you kind of pivoted, to be honest, into different things, and it'd be really insightful to share where it all began. So, Lara, how did your journey start in the world of your career? Gosh.
Yeah, I don't really know where to start with this, because I think, like most people, it's been a really squiggly career, and for so long, I've kind of been quite like ashamed of how disorganized it has appeared to be, right? So I think for a very long time we're told, you go to school, university, you get a job, you work up the ladder, you become more successful in an industry known as a thought leader in this space. Like, this is how I perceived success. And so I went to university. I loved the aspects of university that I attended and got involved with, but
what did you study?
So I studied media and communication at Brighton University. Okay. And I've always been fascinated by this kind of the element of communication, the history of it. How do we communicate? What's the philosophy behind that? That actually was the part that kept me in this course, because it was very heavily based on philosophy, which I didn't think I'd enjoy, but I found it utterly fascinating. Censorship, propaganda, freedom of speech, knowledge is power, all these like amazing concepts
links into what you're doing now, doesn't it?
That drive societal change, impact, creates movements, and fascinating. But also, part of our study course work was to like set up an Instagram account, understand what this new platform Twitter is all about, build websites, learn how to film and do videography and social media. So all the stuff that I basically ended up doing in some degree. But I struggled mentally. I've lived most of my life as an undiagnosed ADHDer, like many, many people. And I understand this is like a hot topic for people now, I think, because it's just becoming more prevalent as people are talking about it more. They're kind of relating to a lot of the topics that are coming up in the media, and it means that there's more awareness about it, which I think is amazing. But for a very long time, I've struggled with, feeling different, weird, not part of like any real sense of community. So I always felt like I was on the outside of things, and that impacted my interest in university in general. I just didn't really want to be there for a lot of the time. So I'm sure there probably were career talks, but I didn't go to any. And it wasn't clear to me what the obvious path was. And so although I had an interest in that, I joined like a Wired Sussex internship program, and I signed up to like a social media and web design company, and did project management and social media in there, which is great. Then I was offered a full-time job. Alongside this, I actually worked in a sex shop and ended up managing it for a while, which was an amazing kind of like, a form of escapism from the actual real world that I was kind of working in. And I think actually, because it's all quite blurry, I was working part-time in the sex shop during my studies, and then was offered a full-time job whilst also trying to look for other roles within, the media space. And so I did those in alongside each other for a while, until I realized, working in the sex industry is not the direction I want to go in. But that was a very so many stories that we just won't go into right now. Like probably one of the most fun jobs. Probably one of the most fun jobs I've ever had, and the most interesting interview. My interview with my then manager was to sell a rampant rabbit to her, and that was my job interview. Obviously there was like conversation around the selling of the sex toy, but it was so much fun, and definitely kept a bit of humor amongst this kind of like career that I was trying to evolve and find my feet in. And I think it all changed when I was in Brighton at the time, and my partner and I, now husband, were moving to London. And I really loved what I did in this web development, social media agency, essentially. And so I went to London to a recruitment agency to look for a similar job there, and walked out having accepted a job in the recruitment agency.
That happened to me, you know.
Really, it's so funny how these things happen. They like, you know, tempted me in with the, you know, the good commission structure, and the opportunities were really fun, cool clients. And you know what, it was fun, and it was well paid. And I kind of worked my way up the ladder in recruitment for quite a while within digital advertising and media. So again, it's kind of in line with what I was doing at university. And so I was still very interested in the industry as a whole. But I think because I'd worked in a variety of quite masculine and toxic environments, it didn't complement who I was as an individual. And so for quite a while, I found myself kind of molding and shaping myself into these different environments to try and fit in. And along the way, kind of lost my sense of self and my sense of purpose. And got to about 28, 29, and then found myself in this kind of bout of depression, which I kind of now know was because I was not aligned with my purpose. I was completely misaligned with all my values. I didn't really recognize who I was. And I was working to make more money, to pay more bills, to buy more things, to, you know, go out and have more of a social life. And nothing was really that fulfilling anymore. And so, you know, I came backwards and forwards with my partner and my family, lots of tears, lots of I can't do this anymore, lots of I'm not enjoying it anymore. And eventually, the day before I turned 30, I quit my job without anything to go into, because I was at that point where I actually just needed the headspace to figure out what it was I wanted to do with my life. And then on my 30th birthday, I was like, what the hell have I done? I'm 30 years old. I'm unemployed. I just got married. I've got a mortgage to pay. What the hell? And then very quickly, I was like, okay, so what am I interested in? Let's go back to my roots. Let's look at, you know, what I'm good at. I wrote a list of 10 things that brought me joy, and I took all the advice of my friends, and, you know, listened to all the self-help books, and decided that I wanted to work with people, support people. I wanted to travel. I wanted freedom. I wanted financial freedom. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to like share my knowledge and really work with people on like a personal level to sort of support them in whatever mission they were on. And so I went into what I knew best, which was social media, marketing, events, set up my first proper consultancy, which is called Lemon Sugar. My name is Lara Sheldrake, so LS. And kind of went from there in this self-employment world, which at the time it just felt like fun. You know, I didn't have kids then. I was working with some cool clients. Funnily enough, one of my recruiter kind of competitors had introduced me to who was then my longest standing client, who was someone who worked at Facebook. And she became one of my longest standing clients, and I was supporting her with her business. And I learned loads, and I worked with some amazing people, and I absolutely loved it. And then I got pregnant. And that's when we come sort of back around to this need to kind of feel part of something that was bigger than me and what I was doing, and to access this sense of community and support that I craved, having literally just been thrown into this new world of motherhood, not knowing what the hell I was doing, how I was going to bring up this baby and run a business and manage my finances, which historically I've been awful at. And yeah, that's when Found and Flourish was born. So that's like the squiggly kind of top line route to where I am today.
Well, I think a lot of people can totally relate to the crying and, being like, I cannot do this anymore. I have been there myself.
I think we all have. It's a rite of passage, surely.
100%. It's exactly what I did. I quit my job just before my 30th birthday, and then I launched my agency.
Did you
Talent.
really? I didn't know
just
that.
before my 30th birthday, because I was like,
oh my gosh,
what am I doing in my life? And I just thought, sod it. I don't have any kids. I don't have any sort of ties, and I did exactly that. I wanted to travel, so I went and worked remotely from lots of different places, like Ibiza, from Crete, from Lisbon for a month. I was just so I can totally relate to that entire journey, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can. And then you've obviously went freelance and then starting your agency and then managing motherhood at that point. So I'd love to just go to that, because I think a lot of people will relate to this. I know so many business owners who are freelance, who are female, and they think, how do I factor in a child when I'm going freelance? So how did you manage that whole process?
It's a really good question. And I think we muddle on through. I never worked, it's funny, I was going to say I never worked full time. I worked more than a full-time job on my business. I worked every evening. I worked a lot of weekends. I actually have a lot of regrets about how I did it. So I'm happy to say how I made it work and then what I would have changed, because I think that's really important to talk about as well. So I have a very supportive partner, but at the time, this was pre-COVID, so there wasn't any flexibility. He was up at 6:30, out the door at 7, back at maybe 7 o'clock. For the first 6 months of my baby's life, Bodhi's life, who's now 6.5, I worked around his naps. And I don't know whether I was very lucky or this is just normal, but I mean, I've got a daughter as well, and I don't think she napped as well, so maybe I was just lucky. But he slept a lot. So I would work around his naps. I'd record podcasts while he was napping in the next room. I'd bring him to events. I'd be breastfeeding him in between hosting panels. He became part of my blended work life, setup, rather than me kind of working around this new kind of role of motherhood. So it was more like, I think we live in a world, or at least in a society here, where a lot of the time our lives are dictated by our work or our parental responsibilities. Excuse me. But I think in other cultures, there's this lovely way of blending all of them together. People are working with their kid on their back, or people are, going to see friends and their kids are playing in the other room. It's not as kind of like siloed as it is here. And so for me, I just did what felt right at the time. And I don't have any regrets about this. I love the fact that I, brought Bodhi on the tube with me. We went to an event and someone would hold him in the audience while I'd be chairing a panel, and then I'd be able to breastfeed him and then take him home. And, that was great. And I loved that. And that's kind of how I made it work until he was about 9-10 months, and he moved more, needed more from me. He was crawling, walking. And so I found a nanny agency through a contact that I knew and trusted. And she literally just gave me a bit of respite, maybe a couple of hours every other day. And then at weekends, Rich might take him out while I did a bit of work. I would work every evening without a doubt. And that works for me because I have ADHD. I am like an Energizer bunny, and I come alive at night. I'm a really rubbish morning person, which I've only really come to terms with the last few years. But the sun starts to go down and I start to wake up. And you've got like morning larks, night owls, and I think you need to know how you work best and work to your energy levels, not your time. And that's one of the biggest kind of tips I can give anyone who's like struggling with trying to get stuff done, because we do live in a new age world where we've got hybrid working. We don't work in that industrial world where you have to sit at a desk 9 to 5. I know, unfortunately, there are a lot of businesses that still work like that, but especially when you work for yourself, you control your time, you manage your diary. Like, don't put calls in the morning if you are much better in the afternoon. Do your exercise in the morning, nap in the morning, go on runs, read books, listen to podcasts in the morning. Organize your work life based on how you work best, because we work for ourselves so that we have that sense of freedom. And what's the point in having that sense of freedom if we're still kind of conforming to that like 9 to 5 setup? It just doesn't make any sense. So for me, I do a lot of stuff in the afternoons and evenings, and that works for me. When he got a bit older, we moved from London to Brighton, and then lockdown happened literally just a few months after. we moved. And I think that changed a lot of things. Like, on the one hand, the business grew exponentially because we had already started building a presence in London and Manchester and Brighton. And we had people saying, what are we going to do now? Like, how can we connect with people, learn from people? How can we go to online events? And I was like, maybe I'll set up a membership. And that's what I did. And we sold out 100 places, I think, in like 5-10 minutes. It's funny because I remember looking at the emails and I was like, no one signed up. Oh my God, this is an absolute flop. What have I done? And I hadn't realized that I hadn't connected like this payment platform to my email. So I wasn't getting the notifications. And when I logged in about 2 hours later, I realized that the doors had closed, like literally after I opened them, and it was like full. And it was such like a surreal moment. And, you know, the business grew. We made quite a lot of money from partnerships because, you know, that was quite rife then, partnerships and brands wanting to get in front of audiences because everyone was online. And yeah, it became a profitable business within a matter of months. It was an amazing time. But with that whirlwind of like success also came this need to always feel like I was on all the time, you know, responding to all the needs. You know, suddenly I went from running something that was quite well managed to always being online, always being accessible, not having hired a team yet, although that came about a month or two later. And so I just completely burnt out. And I realize now that I have this huge fear of rejection and this great need to be perfect. So perfectionism and this rejection dysmorphia is actually really common with people with ADHD. I've done a lot of research about ADHD recently, as you can probably tell. And these are two things that have really dictated a huge part of my life. And some of my biggest regrets are prioritizing this need to either be successful or appear to be successful, even if it had kind of not necessarily gone against my values, or that is essentially what I was doing. But I had sacrificed a lot, including time with my child, because if I wasn't online and if I wasn't getting back to people and if people weren't happy with like the service I was providing, it wasn't good enough. And that was the most important thing to me. And I think there's this idea of hyper focusing on stuff as well. And when you can become obsessed with your mission and what you're doing, you become blindsided. And I'm not quite sure. I mean, there are obvious things that I would have changed, but I think sometimes you can be so obsessed with this like tunnel vision that you have, you kind of forget everything else that's going on around you. And so I burnt out, and then I got really ill. I had tonsillitis, and, you know, my whole body was really run down. And I realized then that, you know, there were some big key changes that I needed to make. But honestly, it's taken me years to get to the point where I prioritize mental health and physical health before I open up my laptop. I don't work around my kids ever. I might have my phone on me if I've got my 2-year-old with me every now and again, but I promised myself I'd never get to that point again, because we were in lockdown. And I might be going on about this, but I just wanted to share this because I was so desperate for this kind of, you know, and I think we need to give ourselves grace as well. I'm being really harsh on myself, given that we were in lockdown. We were locked in our houses 23 hours a day with a 2-year-old who was becoming like a Tasmanian devil, who was developing or had ADHD himself. You know, we were juggling so much stuff, and, you know, there are families with more kids, homeschooling, like, and we still give ourselves a hard time going, oh, I wish I'd, you know, be more present with the kids. I mean, fuck, can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah, it's fine.
I mean, fuck that. How, like, we put so much pressure on ourselves. And so, you know, I look back and I think, you know, I wish I hadn't put on Hey Dougie as much. I wish I hadn't, you know, tried to distract him with all the like iPad games and even saying it out loud. I realized like I just need to give myself a bit of grace. But there is a level of regret I have as to how I prioritize my work over my being a mother. And I think there's a bit more of a balance I could have had. But I think, you know, the kind of approach I had to business, the fact it was locked down, my undiagnosed, neurodiverse, wonderful brain at the time, I didn't understand how everything was working and slotting into place. And I think I just gave myself a really hard time. And so I think, to answer your question, it's a bloody juggle. You muddle on through. Nothing is perfect. Your community is everything. Find people that you trust. Ask for help, and don't be afraid to say, like, I can't do this at the moment. Like, I push back so much now on work stuff and commitments. And the other day, my son Bodhi was ill, and a year ago, had this situation been this then, I would have handled it so differently. So we had an online event that was happening, and it was raising money for Operation Olive Branch, a charity supporting families trying to escape Gaza. And, you know, this meant so much to me. It was the first online event we were running for Give a Shit. And he was really ill and my partner was away. And I was like, right, yeah, that's fine. I'll reschedule the event. I'll cancel it. We need to look after you. I didn't second guess it. Whereas a year ago, I would have been like, right, who can come around and look after him? What am I going to do? Maybe we can just, you know, like work something else out. And I think that massive mindset shift is huge for me, because it's something that would have taken me a long time to, come round to that idea of prioritizing that moment over work and people pleasing and, you know, keeping up with appearances. So I'm speaking very candidly about this because I think maybe
a lot of people will probably find, like, how do you juggle everything? But I think it's clear that you set really clear boundaries, which is really refreshing to hear. And, you know, the ability to say no is really important as well. So I think a lot of people can learn from your experiences for sure. Definitely. So thank you very much for sharing all that.
No worries.
So I've got a question for you just regarding, you know, I guess the growth of Found and Flourish. So obviously Found and Flourish took off throughout lockdown. You had some really good success thereafter, but you obviously then became a part of Startup Grind. So how did that all transpire?
Yeah, so Christina Pericati, who ran it at the time, I don't know how we got introduced, but I interviewed her for our startup toolkit. She was talking about the difference of accelerators, incubators, you know, what angel investing looks like versus VC funding. She runs Southeast Angels, which is an amazing angel network in the Southeast. And things were getting busy on her side and she needed some support. And we got talking about what she was looking for. And I was like, maybe I can help. And it's a really lovely opportunity to tap into my local network, which is Brighton Hove, Worthing, and get to know some of the startups and founders in this area. And so we run panel events every quarter, and we try to do regular meetups, but it really depends on like the capacity at the time.
Definitely. And I've seen you obviously host a couple of panels, which have been really, really inspirational and great. So anyone who is interested in getting up into the startup scene, definitely check out the Startup Grind events. And I'm sure you'll see Lara at one of them. So you've obviously had, in your own words, a bit of a squiggly career. And I love to see this because I think there's a lot of anxiety around, you know, choosing the right career for you straight off the bat when you graduate from university. And then also people will go into roles that actually they really don't like. They figure it out as they go along because that's the only way that you really learn, through life experience. So for those who are maybe looking to do a bit of a pivot, maybe they want to become a freelancer, or maybe maybe they're you at 29 freaking out being like, I don't know what I want to do with my career next. What advice would you give to them in terms of resources or key learnings that you had from that experience, and how could you help those who are in a similar position?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to have a bit of a brain dump on what's really important to you. I think a lot of the time when I find myself in a muddle or feeling quite like low, it's usually because I'm not working in alignment to my values and purpose. And when I am, I feel like I'm on fire, you know, like nothing can stop me. And I think sometimes we can feel really stuck in where we're at because we don't know what we want or should be doing. And I think that word should is quite dangerous, actually. It's what we want to be doing. And then you've got the inner chimp that says, oh, but you can't do that because of this, or you can't do that because you haven't got experience in this, or you can't do that, you know, and you've got all these reasons why you shouldn't be doing that thing. But having a bit of a brain dump on all the things you want to do. So this is why I did that list of like 10 things that I love, like 10 things I really want to do that's going to light me up. And I kind of use that as a bit of my North Star. So I think really knowing like what lights you up, what's important to you, what gets you riled up when you think about, you know, things that are happening in the world, what difference do you want to make, and what problem do you want to solve? That's like a key question that I would ask. We are so lucky to live in an age where pretty much everything can be accessed for free. There are free communities, there's free support. YouTube is the most amazing tutorial platform you could ever access. You know, Google how to do anything and there'll be a YouTube video for it. Podcasts are free. You know, you could set up a business for like 30 quid to get a domain name. Find people who have done something similar that you can learn from. Share your challenges, ask your questions. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable in these situations and say, look, I'm starting out with this. Can you help me? What would you do? What would you have done differently? Can you introduce me to someone? Your network is your net worth. And I genuinely believe that if you are surrounded by the right kind of people, you can make what you're doing a success. One of our values is you're not an island. You know, you're not expected to have all the skills, all the answers, and know all the people. That is what community is for. So find people that you connect with. Find people who are aligned with your values, work towards something that's really meaningful to you, and know that you don't have to have lots of money or lots of experience in something to be good at it or to make it a success. Like that, you know, we have a very good foundational kind of access to resources to start things off. And then I think it's about being really considered about where you then invest your money and time. So whether it's coach, it's consultants, it's a membership platform. But I think all those decisions will be a lot easier when you know what you're doing, what you want to do, and then what you need. I hope that helps.
I would say so for sure. And so just on that, can you recommend any podcasts specifically or resources? I know you mentioned YouTube there, but any specifically that would help people in this circumstance?
Yes. Well, there are some great books for starters, which I think give a really good kind of foundation when it comes to setting up your business and doing things in a way that's going to work for you. So Company of One is a great book. Paul Jarvis is the author. I'm literally like digging out these in the back of my brain, so bear with me because I didn't prepare any of these. Content Inc. is a fantastic book by...
You told me about that one.
Yeah. Joe Polizzi, who kind of talks about the importance of building a community first and then finding the needs and creating solutions. So almost like building a business off of the back of like building a community and understanding what it is they're actually prepared to pay you for, through the lens of creating community that's going to speak to people. Atomic Habits, obviously, James Clear. Women. Tammy Thomas is a brilliant coach who talks about basically the system that we live in, and the fact that we always think that we have to be proactive, productive, busy in order to feel like valued in the world that we live in. And so she does like a real sort of mindset shift for people on how we can find joy in the things that we're doing, which I think is a really important book that everyone should read, actually, especially at the beginning of their journey, because so often we think we have to graft and hustle and be exhausted in order to be successful, but we really don't. Like, working hard does not make you successful. Working aligned to your values and purpose with grit and determination does, but hard work in itself is like a toxic trait and it's a trap. So I think, having that mindset shift is really important. I think also More Sales Please is a great one by Sarah Dalrymple, who is a member. She talks about, finding joy and actually showing up and being visible. And when you start a business, being visible is really key, like being confident in talking about what you're doing and, articulating it in a way that's really going to resonate, whilst also articulating your opinions and thoughts so people can connect with you on that human level. 4,000 Weeks was a brilliant book by Oliver Burkeman, which I just have to recommend because it was life-changing for me. And it really gave me that mindset shift necessary to prioritize really what's important to me over what I think I should be doing. And, you know, he says things like, every time you answer an email, another one comes back, right? It will require another response. So again, it's a fallacy trying to get to that inbox zero, because it's never going to stay at zero. And he talks about all these different concepts of time, and the whole premise is we on average have 4,000 weeks to live on this planet. And so it's really down to you how you choose to live them. And I know some of these are kind of more wider concepts, like, you know, mindset books, but I think it's really important that mindset is not neglected in this, because for so long I worked on these success metrics and the building of the business, and I neglected my mindset. And had I actually worked on my mindset first, I think I'd be in a very different situation right now, or at least I would have got to this point quicker and probably would have made less mistakes along the way. Yeah, I'm going to leave that for people to discover for themselves, because I think they're quite individual, but books is something that I could talk about all day.
I love that. And Content Inc. is actually sat on my shelf after your recommendation.
Oh, nice.
So
have you read it?
I have actually read
it.
Oh,
great.
Hence,
good. Well
hence
done.
why we're starting the content right now.
Of
we're
course.
doing the content.
Well done. You're doing the thing.
Exactly. So what is the best advice you've ever received from a mentor?
Your time is your most undervalued but precious resource. So we really do undervalue our time, but it is the most valuable resource we'll ever have. And again, it goes back to this concept of like working hard and spending all the hours doing something, or, you know, under promising, over delivering. You know, it makes no sense. And a big mindset shift for me was when I worked with a money coach, a wealth coach, Sarah Maxwell, Sarah without an H, Maxwell. She's brilliant. She's called the Wealth Coach online. And I was telling her about my fees, and she was like, okay, so what do you actually do within these like power hours or mentoring series? And I told her, and she was like, okay, so it's not an hour you're charging, you're actually charging for 3 hours worth of work. And then on top of that, you're thinking about the experience, the money you've paid on courses, the time you spent investing in learning this stuff, the mistakes that you've made, you know, these, you know, things that you've learned along the way. And it was a big mindset shift for me, because I was like, of course, you know, we so often undervalue our time and our expertise because we're worried that someone will question the value of what we have to offer. But really, like, you know, our time is so precious.
And so what is one non-career related thing that you think has actually helped you to be successful in your career to date?
So this is a tough one to answer, because I want to say being a parent, but I know that's not very inclusive. But for me, you know, I'll give you two. So the first one is being a parent, because I was talking to a friend of mine, Emily Bellet, who runs Vestbod, and she was saying that she interviewed someone, and I'll never forget this. She was saying that this woman said that she was so grateful for being a mum and an entrepreneur, because it meant that she had these enforced boundaries within her working day. I'm also defined by the things that I like to do outside of my work, which is swim in the sea, you know, set physical challenges, whatever they may be, because that reminds us who we are when we're not behind our laptop doing work stuff.
Indeed. I go to a spin class at Rocks Life in Brighton.
Oh yeah, nice.
On a Monday night with Alan, he was my PT as well, and his ability to just get you in the zone and just like push you so much harder is phenomenal. I think he's one of the best trainers I've ever experienced, and so I'm in total agreement with that, because he literally is like, what can you get over today? Okay, you can get over this in your life, you know. And it's just huge.
Yes, exactly. It's so true. I mean, the amount of times I've been lying on my back in Pilates crying because they're like, and release, and you're like, oh, you know, and you release all the shit from the day, and you're like, oh my god, I didn't realize I needed this so much. But spin is another one. You're absolutely right. Like, you just go for it, and you come out, and you're like, oh, what was I worrying about with that client or that thing, you know? And it's just, totally. It's amazing, like the release that you have. And that also, that like re-centered to your core. It's not just about like what happened in your work day, but how you feel after you've pushed yourself in like another area of your life. It's so important, isn't it? Even if it's just going for a nature walk, you know, it doesn't have to be physically pushing yourself, but taking yourself out of that work environment, I think, is so important, especially when you work for yourself.
Absolutely. And so finally, Lara, you have given us so much in terms of, I don't even know where to start. You've offloaded a lot of wonderful
I've
tips
offloaded a lot. I'm so sorry. I feel like it was almost like a therapy it's my second therapy session of the day. I had one earlier, as you know, and maybe I just hadn't completely divulged everything, so I just word vomit. Sorry.
No, I think when I say offload, I mean in terms of you've given so much in terms of richness and like vulnerability, but in a way that a lot of people can learn from and probably really relate to. So I think it's been wonderful.
Thanks, Claudia.
So on that note, how can people find you? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, find me, connect with me, link in with me. I'm Lara Sheldrake. On Instagram, I'm Lara_Sheldrake. Give a Shit Global is our Instagram handle, and Found Flourish is our Instagram handle. And then you can find us, foundflourish.co.uk. Give a Shit on Substack. Or Google me, and hopefully most
don't forget to share, subscribe, and rate
Amazing.
the podcast on whichever platform you're tuned in on. Thanks for listening.
Joining me on the podcast. Thank you so much, Claudia. I love what you're doing, and best of luck with it. It's amazing.
Thank you.